Mr. Grady Saxman. Grady, thanks so much for having us here at Saxman Studios today.
Like, what was the budget for the demo? Like, what can you guys spend? And they tell me, and I'm like, oh wow. I was like, well, I can make it sound just as bad for half that. If you're gonna work this way, like really understanding people's tendencies and their traits and what makes them excited to play an instrument and use it towards use it for your benefit. So you want people to be stoked to be here.
All right, everybody. Once again, welcome to the Studio 101 Recording Podcast. My name is Brad Phillips. Today's guest is the Mr. Grady Saxman. Grady, thanks so much for having us here at Saxman Studios today. Really appreciate your time and allowing us to chat with you for just a few minutes.
Well, I appreciate you asking me and happy to be here. And it's nice to see you again. It's been a minute. I caught you a couple years ago, and I know you guys have had a lot going on last couple of years at your place, so it's good to catch up.
Catch back up and see some of the things you guys have tweaked in the studio here and ever evolving for the great sound you guys have coming out of the studio here. Love what you guys do, and I've been following you for a long time. And was just in town this week and was hoping we could get to sit down and talk about maybe some studio stuff, studio life. But one thing I always do is, Grady, I always like for people to kind of know your story, kind of know where you were born, where you grew up, how you got into music, kind of what led you to kind of where you are here at Saxman Studios. Maybe you can give us an insight to what that looks like.
I'll keep it short.
I hear you.
You can always do a deep dive. There's plenty of other interviews where I go way back into my history. But long story short, I am from Southeast Texas, swamps.
Nice.
I went to college. I did like a 2-year music performance degree and almost finished it, but ended up moving here. I moved here when I was 20. That was 2010. And my goals and aspirations were always just to play on records. That's kind of what I liked to do growing up. I used to start bands. We would practice, play gigs, go into the studio, make a record, then I would quit. And I'd go start another band and do it over and over again. I was just really, really interested in like hearing myself back on tape. I always liked that part of it. And it was kind of cool, like having something tangible, back in the day, a CD. You're like, that was 15 minutes ago. I walked out with the CD, listening in the car right now. I mean, it's not done, but it's like same thing. Like when we were in bands, like we'd video our shows and then we'd watch it, you know what I mean, the next day. So we were always listening. And so I always liked, kind of just like the capturing part of the music process. And when I came to town in 2010, I did spend probably 3 years touring, but I say touring with like touring, you know what I mean? It was more weekend warrior stuff, but enough for me to know that I didn't really like it, that much. Even like I had some cool gigs, and buses and private jets and just the traveling, man. I'm not really cut out for that. So that's when I was like, okay, like I need to start somehow like figuring out how to start my own studio. And so my very first place, I went in with a partner named Trinidad, who I was on the road with. And I didn't know. I mean, I went to school for performance, and I never thought I was gonna need to learn engineering. And so I got into the studio. I had no gear. Trinidad had all the gear. All I had was like 8 drum kits, and I just learned. I learned YouTube Academy.
Yep. That's a viable way to kind of get that hard knocks education, kind of being thrown in the fire and then having to figure it out. And, you have to use a lot of your ear to kind of know what sounds you're looking for and how to, capture that.
Totally.
Specifically for drums, man. And we'll get into the drum thing here soon. But, so Saxman Studios in this form has been here for how long?
We've been in this building, this house, since 2016.
Gotcha.
So
around 9 years, and
Yep.
you're kind of situated out here in Mount Juliet, a little bit outside of Nashville. When people think about Nashville, it kind of have in their mind Music Row, Broadway, but Mount Juliet is just as much Nashville as it is anything to me. It does still feel a little bit less crowded out here, you know,
Oh yeah,
thankfully.
it
Uh,
depends. You know, Providence will get you.
yeah.
But Mount Juliet now feels a lot more like the Nashville I moved to
Yep.
in 2010.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, there's unfortunately on Music Row, a lot of those places are gone.
Mhm.
You know.
Your big studios, Ocean Way, um, some of the bigger guys are still kind of operating. But and I thought about this on the way over here, man. And this is not a this is a compliment by all means, but what you guys have going out here feels a lot like the old County Q days, which was when I was here in the 90s, up to around 2000, 2001. And what I love about what you guys are doing is you're working with a ton of independent artists who come through here, but you're also giving them a label, you're giving them a sound that sounds like a label project, you know, for tons of the artists that come through. And I love that mentality that you guys have. You know, and we'll just mention, you know, Trey Lewis was one of the big songs that you guys had. Gosh, not 3 years ago now. I'm not sure the
That's
math.
2020.
2020. My goodness, time
Yeah.
flies, man.
Yeah, 2020.
Huge song for Trey. You guys have done some other songs with Trey since then. But that's kind of how you know, being in South Carolina, that's kind of how I was introduced to you guys is,
Yeah.
you know, through some artists like Trey, and, you know, just kind of being the champion for independent artists in country music, which, you know, for a lot of years, if you didn't have a label deal, it was hard to be visible, in the country music industry specifically, but that's kind of, it's changed a lot over the
It's
last
gotten a lot
10
better.
years.
I mean, I still feel like you know, unfortunately as an independent artist, like a lot of people will kind of use you as a stepping stone for
Mhm.
the next thing. Where like I try to position the studio as like a stepping stone for them
Yeah,
for their career. You know what I mean?
for real. Yeah.
Try to set them up with the best sounding records they can make. You know what I mean? The most
Mhm.
efficiently as possible, and then kind of let them go out into the world and promote it,
Yeah.
and let what's supposed to happen happen. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Because I'm not out there A&Ring these records and taking them to meetings and stuff like that. I'm just focused on the record.
Right. I resonate with that philosophy a ton, the way that we have our studio space set up in South Carolina. And we were talking earlier about the fact that you guys put in the Shelford console several years ago, which for audio people who are listening, you guys have, is it 18 channels of
24.
Shelford? So they have the full 24 channels of Shelford, in a desk that was kind of custom built by you guys. It sounds absolutely incredible. You know, from being a drummer, dialing in all of your drum tones. Every time you guys hit the red button, the drum tones are just like they're just there. They're dialed in. You know, and that's something that's super great, and that's something that I love about what you guys do is kind of keeping the live session tracking stuff alive. And I've said it on one of our other podcasts, but it's not a knock at guys who are producing, you know, Logic drums, all the things that stuff works for whatever project you're working on. But you know, as the years have 20 something years has gone by since I lived here in town, and the production side of things has kind of teetered on the, well, let's just program everything. Or we still got some live session guys that are kind of sprinkled in every, you know, here and there. But it feels like to me, and maybe you can speak into this, in the last several years, like live guys in a room together, it's kind of come back a little bit. I don't know if you feel the way that I felt about a certain time in the industry where like it was fading a little bit to where the live sessions were not quite as popular as they used to be. But I don't know. It feels like nowadays that in the past 5 years at least, that this live session approach with real guys in the room, 4 to 5 guys in a room, is kind of coming back and
Yeah.
kind of being a prominent thing again.
What's interesting because, being a drummer, if I'm on a session, it's one of those, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? So for the last 15 years, 90% of my time, even if live sessions were dwindling, unless I pop my head up and look around, it's hard for me to know. you know, because all I'm doing is the same thing every day and just more of it through time. So in my world, it's like it's growing,
Yeah.
you know. But um, there's something to be said about like when you're working with a producer and building up your tracks, like your scratch tracks, right? I feel like there's a lot of creativity. You're not limited by time. You know what I mean? It's more of a hang. There's some cool ideas come out in those moments. And then I think one thing that I think for the I would say like the majority of records in Nashville still since like when you were here,
Mhm.
a lot of the demos might have been pieced together in a room, you know what I mean? But whenever it came time to really make a record,
You're
they
retracting.
would take all that
Yeah.
and then they would filter it back
Yeah.
through live guys,
Right.
you know, or guys live on a floor,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just to kind of, because you know, like when you're just one guy and like say like you're a keyboard player primarily,
Yeah.
you know, you might be programming some stuff on the drums. It's just not realistic.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You can't replicate it live.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Most of
like
the
I
time.
call it octopus drummer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm
That's
like, I can't
hilarious.
physically do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so I think it's important, you know, if you have the capability of filtering it back through humans, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
I think that's a really honest representation of how the song should be, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
In country
Sure.
music, it's like it's all about being honest and believable,
Mhm.
especially nowadays, especially with TikTok, everything's gotten even more rough around the edges and more,
Yeah.
I don't know. I hate to say the word like outlaw, but like
Yeah.
Texas country's gotten super huge, and guys like Wyatt Flores are
Mhm.
making a big splash, and Zach Bryan, and all those records
Yeah.
are super human.
Just raw.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a trend, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but there's kind of a trend back around to the, quote 90s country sound and stuff, with Zach Top and all that stuff. At the time of this recording of this episode, that's kind of some of the trends that are going on. So sonically, um, a record might call for a real dobro, a harmonica, there's kind of things that have come back around that weren't super popular in 2012 and 2014, so um, but I do, just so I seriously love what you guys are doing here and keeping alive the session stuff that's happening and the great sound and stuff that's coming out of here on a regular basis. Is a testament to the hard work you guys have put in, and it's very evident to me that you guys really value excellence in everything that you're doing, and your artists are benefiting on the back end because you guys are giving them a super great product as an independent artist. It's still dog eat dog world out there. You're as an independent, you're trying to maybe you're jumping on TikTok or maybe you're jumping on Instagram and you're trying to find a space where you belong with your art.
Right.
And half of the battle to me with artists I've worked with over the years is just making sure you present a really excellent version of yourself, and that starts with your recordings.
Yeah.
And even if it is Wyatt Flores or Zach Bryan or whatever, sonically that's what represents them best. They're more raw sounding stuff, and just finding your lane, so to speak, is super cool. And that's from a studio owner, producer standpoint. Being able to walk hand in hand with these artists that are coming through. I've seen over the years that it's super rewarding. To look at maybe you are a stepping stone here at Saxman to go on to a bigger label deal or something, and kind of having a part in the artist's career as they move
Totally.
forward. It's a cool feeling to me.
It's nice either way. I mean, if someone blows up and is successful and we're still working together, then cheers. You know what I mean? Like, we're cheerleading that. If someone gets signed with Big Machine and they get put with Dan Huff, then we're cheering you on too, just the same. You know what I mean? Like at the end of the day, like we just want everybody to win.
Yep.
What regardless of what that looks like, and I think that's part of the reason why we do say it's so busy is like there's just really not an ego
Mhm.
based around like there's no like uh weird interests or anything like that. I've worked with plenty of artists as a producer and then as a player and then as a producer again. You know what I
Yep.
mean? And people have gone off. We did a record, got signed, got dropped, came back. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then some people just have gone off and just never returned.
Yeah,
You know what I
but
mean? Out
you're
doing their
still
thing.
cheering for them
Oh
probably
yeah,
every
of
day, man.
course,
Because
100%. Yeah.
but I love that approach, and that's once again one of the things I love about what you guys do here because I think that that attitude goes a long, long way. Um, because you're going to get a referral from that artist that super loves you to someone else
Well,
that
at the
they've
end
come
of,
in
I think
contact
at
with.
the end of the day, it's important to remember that, like, it. I think speaking as a producer specifically, you get so emotionally invested in projects that it really hurts whenever like life happens and people get signed and all of a sudden they're getting put with new people. It's nothing against you or a knock against you. It's just, if I was the guy with all the money and I had a track record of producing hits with certain people,
It's
I'm
probably going to go that
investing in
way. Yeah,
you,
yeah.
right?
Mhm.
So I as an investor, I would feel very confident in using my people that have a track record. And so it's just one of those things, like, until, you do enough consistent work like that, people, are naturally just going to kind of move on to the next thing, and that's fine. But like I said, speaking as a producer, I feel like that's one of the situations where, you know, they we could work on getting better about that, like not getting so emotionally attached to the artist specifically, because it's their art, their project at the end of the day, and they're always going to do what's best for their art. You know what I mean? And so if it's signing and working with another producer, they're going to have to make that decision because that's what that's their dream. They've worked very hard up until that point, and someone's like, "All right, cool. This is it. This is the real deal. We're going to put you with so and so." And they're going to be like, "Okay, yeah, great. That's fine." And you should be okay with that, because at the end of the day, it's like, if you really care about the artist and you really care about the music, it's like you want it to be heard. You want it to go out and find the best legs possible. And it's not about you as a producer. You know what I mean? It's about them. So I think that that's one of the reasons why we do stay so busy, is because people aren't worried about offending anybody. You know what I mean? Like, someone goes off, gets signed, I'm not producing them anymore. They're like, "Hey, I still want a cut over there. I'm gonna bring my producer." And I'm like, "Great, let's go. Let's make magic."
I love it,
You
man.
know?
I love it, man. Well, if you can kind of tell us the progression of like maybe in the beginning of this version of the studio, um, what was your process of like client leads and all that stuff? Were you doing so? I guess let me phrase it this way: to kind of establish yourself, were you doing like, okay, we'll do some pro bono projects so we can get something super great out there and let people hear what we're doing, or we'll do some discounted rates on some stuff to get some, to get our studio out there to let people hear what we're doing. What did that look like for you as you were kind of building up to where you are now?
So I started, like, cutting my teeth on demos.
Just publisher demo kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So when I was still touring, I was playing mostly for writers with publishing deals, and they would be listening to their demos in the car or the van or wherever we were going. They'd be listening to that stuff, and I already had a studio, and I'd just be naturally asking questions like, "Oh, who did this demo? Like, that's cool. It sounds good. Like, what was the budget for the demo? Like, what can you guys spend on demos nowadays? This was probably 2015." And they tell me, and I'm like, "Oh, wow." I was like, "Well, I can make it sound just as bad for half that, you know?"
I want to steal that from you. That's great.
But for real, I would just kind of be like, "Yo, like, give me a shot at one," and I'll cut you a hell of a deal. And I started with demos, and like independent EPs. And I just made sure that in the beginning I really poured my heart and my soul into every single one, because it was, I didn't have a whole lot to show for myself. I didn't have a whole lot that I could show to prove to people I knew what I was doing. So, I mean, I was learning, but I was still, I wouldn't let it go without it just being right. And so that's probably where I had to learn the majority of the tool. That's probably where I got most of the tools I have now, is from just really, like, kind of putting myself under the gun, so to speak, and like having to do it and just having to figure it out. And There was no time constraints back then, and I was just a young buck,
Mhm.
all the time in the world.
A lot of seat time in front of the console, figuring stuff out, and
Yeah,
yeah, I've been there, buddy. I understand, but it's like, um, there's a thing to me where it's like, um, pricing and quality and relationships, all those things as a perfect storm come together to help studios be successful, in my opinion.
yeah,
Like there has to be your client has to really super trust you
totally. That's
to
what they're paying for is
yeah,
trust.
yeah, to know that like, Saxman is they're gonna crush this. It's gonna be amazing when it's done. It was in my budget. It was affordable. All those things. Like I think as studio owners that are kind of doing what you're doing, in my opinion, from the outside looking in, if you can give an independent artist with not a large budget, if you can give them the amazing product that they're really looking for, you treat them super well. It's just to me, it's just a magic formula of making all that happen, specifically in the independent artist world, and you guys taking so much care to make sure things sound amazing is, half the battle, so to speak.
Totally. And I think that just from being around it and having so many friends in the industry as artists and writers, I kind of learned early on some of the pitfalls that they would run into, like they might have one of their buddies produce it who's a writer, who has amazing ideas and is a very very talented producer. However, it would never come out on time. You know what I mean? Or it would go way over budget, or there would be a conflict of interest on the songs they were cutting, or when it came time to cut vocals, they would, kind of shift them in the stylistically how they would sing it. I just learned a lot of things, and I was like, okay, well, like I want to just kind of create a place where it's like you can trust us, we're timely, we care,
Hmm.
and we're not going to change you. You know what I mean? Kind of like the Rick Rubin philosophy. It's
Yeah,
like, let's take what you got,
yeah,
let's concentrate it, and let's sell it.
for sure.
Like let's figure out what it is that you like,
Hmm. Love it. Yeah.
and that seemed to kind of work.
Yeah, I think that's a great approach in general, in my opinion, as to how to work with artists and, kind of find their vision, find their sound, all those things, and not be really focused on like overproducing whatever it is they're bringing to the table. It's kind of
Totally.
a thing.
Yeah. It's just striking a balance,
Hmm.
really. Because at the end of the day, like what you're doing is you're establishing trust. Money is not important. If they're paying you $5 or they're paying you 500 or 5,000,
Yeah.
they're not going to pay you unless they feel like they know you're going to give them what they need.
Hmm.
And
Right.
so and that's kind of where I learned early on too. It's like at the end of the day, no one really cares how much it costs. So you need to charge what you need to charge to make sure you can do the job right,
Correct.
you know. And if it works out, that's great. If it doesn't work out, that's good. But you don't need to put yourself in a position where you don't have the capital or whatever it is to make it right, to do the best job possible. So like I remember in the beginning, like I would eat it on some of these projects just to pay for an amazing mixing engineer because I knew I was like I'm not there
Yeah.
as a mix guy. You know
Well,
what I mean?
I think that's a sacrifice in the growing process to get to a certain level that, as a studio owner or an engineer, musician, I think for me, there was a point where I came to a realization of the kind of the exact same thing. And for me, it was letting go of some tasks that I did not have time to do in a week,
Mhm.
and kind of coming to the realization that I need some help. Like I need to bring on kind of a second me to be able to like cover tuning or drum editing or whatever it might be,
Right.
or to cover a vocal session while I'm working on something else.
Right.
And that was hard. That was super difficult for me,
I,
because
I think that's still rare too.
yeah, because I like, sometimes the studio owners and engineers, like, you want to make sure that you have control of the whole situation,
Right.
but if you really dig in and look for that person that fits the role that you're looking for, and you create a relationship with them, those people are out there that can come in and help you fill those roles to help you be able to do the next thing or continue working on the flow, the workflow, help it to continue. So,
Totally.
but
I think for whatever reason, there may or may not be like a stigma about delegating tasks when you're like in charge of a production. And it's interesting to me because I don't see the role of a producer as any any one thing in particular, right? Other than you're solely responsible for getting it done on time, on budget, and it's sounding the way it's supposed to sound. You know what I mean? That's your responsibility. It's like, do you really care how the sausage is made? No.
does it
However,
taste good in the end?
however, I understand 100% like I mean, I'm a control freak myself, so it's like in the beginning I was really doing a lot. I mean, most of it,
Probably more than you should have been.
totally.
Didn't do it. Yeah.
And you kind of live and learn through that process. You're like, okay, well, and that was why like mixing was the first thing for me that I was like, okay, I know I need to delegate this.
Yeah.
One, it takes me forever. I'm talking about 10 years ago, 15 years ago. I was like, this is taking me forever.
Yeah.
It's not coming out as good as it could, and it's not fair. For me, like, it's not the artist's fault that I quoted them super low. And, now I'm the one mixing it. You know what I mean? I should have just added it to the budget and say, this is where it's going,
Yeah.
you know? And I think as long as you're upfront about that kind of stuff, I mean, at this point now, with the volume that I'm doing here, there's absolutely no way that anybody could rationally think I do everything on all of my
Sure.
productions. You know what I mean? I have a whole crew of people that I trust that have been with me for a long time.
You got a great tracking engineer. I don't know if
Yeah,
you want to mention.
Aiden has been here since 2022,
Okay.
so 3 years, and he's like my appendage in Studio A.
He's kind of like your second Grady.
Yeah,
In whatever situation.
and that takes a while to cultivate. You know what I mean? It's one of those synergetic type of things, and like what is it? Was it the sum of the parts is greater than the whole or whatever? Like that whole thing.
Sure.
When you can work with somebody consistently enough to where they know you and your tendencies and kind of keep you in check, like checks and balances are great.
Yeah.
Also somebody that you trust their opinion on, because like I know all my own ideas. I haven't had an original idea for myself in a long time. So it's nice to be able to have another human to bounce ideas off of. And back in the day, and everything was in this room. Like my console was behind the drum kit.
Yeah.
So I was engineering, I was playing, I was editing, I was tracking the vocals, I was tuning the vocals, I was comping the vocals, I was pocketing the harmonies and tuning the harmonies. Sometimes I was mixing, in like 2016 to 2018, and then I ran into a guy named Jonathan Roach that was an amazing mix engineer, and we kind of struck a chord, and that became my appendage in the mix world.
Sure. Yeah.
You know what I mean? For a
Good
long time.
relationship. Yeah.
Yeah, great. And same kind of qualities, someone that would call you out on your bullshit. You know what I
I
mean?
love it. Yeah. That's great. So one of the other things that I really love for this specific building that you're in, for people who haven't been here, Grady's place is set up as it's a house, but it's converted to a studio here in Mount Juliet.
We can always take the camera and do
Yeah,
a
we may do that.
little walk around tour or
May
something
do a little
too.
B-roll. But the thing that I love, and I've tried to emulate it a little bit, to be honest with you, is you set up a little B room that you have connected to your control room, a control downstairs. You also have a mastering suite with Frank, and those are the things that I love to see in studio owners, and let me tell you why. Because when you have a space that's open, and another guy's like, "Hey, I need to put a mastering suite somewhere," well, you can say to them, "Hey, I've got a room just for you. Let's work out a deal." Whatever it is. I don't know what kind of deal you have with Frank, but to me, your artist is here and they see a mastering engineer working inside of your studio building. They see another engineer working in your B room. And it's something intrinsic in people's minds. I think when they come in, they're like, okay, these guys know what they're doing. They're working, they're creating relationships with other engineers that are not necessarily part of, Saxman, the umbrella of Saxman. And I think that's incredibly important in today's kind of climate that we're in with studios and production and all those kind of things. It's a little bit of an old school mentality of the old studios that I knew when I lived here in the 90s and early 2000s of, I mean, you could track and hand your stuff to the mastering engineer and he can spit out the master just right inside of your own building.
Right.
And those are the things that I love that you have done here. And I don't know if you want to speak into what your thought process was some of those things, but maybe just give us an idea of how all that transpired with maybe with Frank and some of the other guys.
Well, I've been working with Frank. Frank's the one that does all the mastering here.
Fuselage
Yeah.
mastering.
I've been working with Frank since 2013.
Mhm.
You know, he's mastered, I mean, thousands of songs for me over the years. And it wasn't until we got to a point here at the studio, I was living here and working here. And whenever it was very evident, like that something had to go, something had to change.
Something had to give, yeah.
So it was honestly just easier to find a new place to live than it was to move a business.
Plus for people who don't know, we talked about the Mount Juliet thing earlier, but like you're not stacked up on top of anyone as you would be on Music Row. I'm sure all of the taxes and fees and all the things are not what downtown Nashville is.
Oh
So
yeah.
there's probably business benefits from being out this way as a studio owner. I didn't want to interrupt you, but
Oh, you're
just
fine.
want to interject that for a
We're
perspective
in
of
a
where you are. So
we have a very ideal situation for what we're doing here. We're on 2 acres. All of our neighbors have 2 acres.
right,
Everybody's a Facebook friend.
sure,
You
yeah,
know what I mean, for the
neighborhood
studio.
watch and all the things. Yeah,
Exactly. So it's a great thing, but living and working under the same roof was fine until about 2020,
yeah,
and it kind of was a tipping point. We had our first kid, we had 2 dogs, and it was just a little stuffy,
Mhm.
and so we ended up building a house very close to here, and that was kind of the time I've always been the like, let me find one guy I like and inundate him with something. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So I was already sending Jonathan way too many songs, and Frank was already mastering all those songs. I had a vocal engineer here at the time
Gotcha.
also. I was still engineering everything because the console was behind the kit still.
Mhm.
But whenever we were like serious about moving out, I was like, okay, well, that's 3 rooms.
Mhm.
So I was like, vocal room, mixing room, mastering room. That's kind of how it came to be. And I think it was more out of the sense of community than it was to be like
Yeah.
showboaty and be like, look, your song never has to leave these 4 walls. But in hindsight, I'm like, oh, it's kind of cool. Like your song doesn't leave.
Yeah.
It stays here.
You said the key word to me, man, and for folks who have been listening to our podcast, the community thing is like is really important to me. And like in our building, we have a B room, the overdub room, and we just built an Atmos suite, which is a completely separate room from Control A and Tracking A. And I brought in there's like 4 or 5 of us engineer guys that there's days when things are not super busy. We hang out
Right.
and while somebody's editing something, or we just go into the Atmos room and listen to whatever mix Donnie's working on. And the community part of that has been just awesome for me
It also
because
accelerates learning.
for sure, because you can see what another human's brain, how they're computing like in their head, like where does the vocal sit? Where does the kick sit?
Right.
How did you get that vocal effect? Yeah, those are the community things that we're talking about.
Yeah. What the hell did you use on this vocal?
Yeah.
Why is it so
Well,
bad?
don't ever do that
Don't do
again.
that again.
Don't do
That's
that
not the
again.
chain,
That's amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's been the thing that we've seen from our place, sort of simulating some of that, community about, and there's not competition. There's like, there may, this is hilarious. There may be an artist that calls me to work on a song, and there may be an artist that calls one of our other engineers to work on a song, and they don't want me to work on it, but they still end up tracking it in the same room, in the same building, and it's fine. I'm not mad about that. That's awesome because I was able to be a part of what these guys or these other guys are doing out of our building, and I want to cultivate that and keep it going.
Totally.
Especially to some of the, I've got a younger engineer who works with us. That's, he's got his one of his first couple label songs that are coming out in the next couple months, and being able to watch that happen, I'm pulling for him.
Oh yeah.
Like I think it's amazing. So that's one of the things that I really love.
I think it goes back to what we talked about earlier, where it's like there's no competition. Everybody's cheerleading everybody.
Sure.
And I think if you're gonna have a communal space, it has to be like that,
Yeah, 100%.
or else things get kind of weird.
Gets definitely could be weird for sure.
So yeah, I mean, it's not the easiest thing to do
Yeah.
either. That's why no one does it.
Yeah, right.
It's like being married to 4 or 5 other people.
Not recommended, guys. Not
Yeah, I
recommended.
mean, let's work on the first marriage first.
Yeah, for real. But
Um,
where we are in South Carolina, we're near the Greenville Spartanburg area, and there are some studios that are there, but there's not a ton of studio space that I would consider to be like operating on a commercial studio kind of mentality, right? Like our numbers on Facebook, our numbers on Google, you can call us off the street and we can negotiate a project for whatever you want to work on.
Right.
So, from that standpoint, as opposed to, some of the producer engineers in Nashville are one artist at a time, one record at a time, one sound, all those things. We're tracking a hardcore record one day. We're tracking country another day. We're tracking hip hop stuff in the B room. So like that's the mentality that I've tried to bring to what we do, and keep that community thing alive. Invest in, we even have some interns and things that come in, to try to give them a view of like what this looks like. What does a hip hop session look like? What does a country session look like? Because it is easy for some of the younger, aspiration people people that have aspirations of engineering and producing, um, to let them just only get locked into the YouTube and Logic thing, um, and only stay in their room at home all the time. Uh, I really have a passion for like making sure that upcoming engineers kind of get a taste of a little bit of everything,
Yeah.
to know that like there's a lot of ways to do that. There's a lot of ways to
Oh,
to
yeah.
work the studio, to work production, all those things. So that's one of the things that I'm passionate about where we are anyway. And I see some of that stuff in what you guys are
Yeah.
doing here
I
for
mean,
sure.
I it's great. That situation's great because it creates a melting pot for artists
Sure.
too. So I mean, it's not like you're a studio in Greenville. It's like
Mhm.
you're a resource.
Yeah.
You're a community. You're a melting pot. People can go meet another artist. You know what I mean? They might start writing together. You
And we've
never
had
know.
that happen tons of times because I do. Um, I do a lot of days that are multi-artist days,
Mhm.
similar to what you do here, I guess sometimes. And there's 3 or 4 different songwriters, performers in the control room at the same time as we shift over from one song to the other.
Right.
And man, I mean, I can think of 3 or 4 scenarios right now where guys they've started co-writing like
Yeah.
all the time,
Yeah.
guys and girls. And yeah, it's all of those things combined. It just kind of excites me, makes me happy, to see it
Yeah, I
happen.
think that that's one of the reasons why this sort of schematic is appealing for some people,
Yeah.
you know? And I would also say that like this kind of thing isn't for everybody either. You know what I mean? Like some people really need to be locked in a room uh and solely like working with one person
Yeah.
the entire time.
Yeah.
And it's just a different workflow, you know?
Exactly.
And sometimes I think as an artist, like you should try it all.
Yeah.
Work with a guy that's completely self-sufficient.
Right.
Go to a communal place like this and work with people that specialize in specific things,
Yeah.
and you just kind of see like what works for your music,
Right.
because there's a benefit for like, yeah, like you come over here, all the players specialize at playing their instrument. That's
Mhm.
all they do every single day. The bass players played on 20 number ones, and the guitar
Yeah.
players played on 37 number ones. They show up every single day and record music. But sure, your brother can play guitar on the record
That's great. But
if he wants
well,
to.
that's the other piece of kind of what you guys do here. It's like if you have a country record coming in, you have your go-to guys that are going to deliver
Mhm.
on demand sonically what your artist is looking for, and you have to be aware when you're talking to an artist. Okay, like maybe it's such and such guitar player, or maybe you have a specific steel player in mind.
Yeah.
Those kind of things are things that you have to be aware of when you book the session. Is
Oh,
who's going to work well in what environment.
totally. That's just part of bidding the thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Especially when you work like how I work. I mean, you live and die by the players that you call.
Sure.
So kudos to the guys that are over here, because I mean, none of this would be, we wouldn't be having this conversation if people didn't play amazing parts
Yeah.
on people's records, because
Right.
nobody would talk about it. However, you have to keep in mind, like, you know, you don't, I try not to pigeonhole people, but I definitely like have slots in my brain that I allocate towards certain people's tendencies.
Yeah.
And so, and you know how it is when you're working on one-offs or something like that. Sometimes you can't just pull the exact people for everything, so you have to have chameleons, you know. But say like you're doing a record and you have the whole day, it's so fun. It's like casting for a movie,
For sure.
you know. That's like it's part of the producer role, is like you're casting for the record, and those choices that you make are going to have a definitive.
Lasting impact.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that that's really, really cool. And I think that's really like if you're going to work this way, like really understanding people's tendencies and their traits and what makes them excited to play an instrument, and use it towards your use it for your benefit, you know. 'Cause you want people to be stoked to be here, you know. So I won't call people for certain projects, because I know it's like they'll do it and they'll do great, but like mentally they're not there for that. You know what I mean? They're
It's a
just kind of getting through.
whole
Yeah.
different thing, especially in, you mentioned those publishing days. It's like, you guys could track 10 or 12 in a day, then you got to blow and go, and like your guitar player has to play, western swing and on one song, and you got to do, modern country on another, and you have to you have to know immediately the tone to go to. You have to know immediately what licks to play to, and you can't just be pigeonholed into just this one trick pony thing, which is a different approach that, like, that's what I was trying to say earlier, is like those scenarios I don't think a lot of younger engineers are getting to witness,
Oh, probably not.
and kind of wrap their mind around, like, how amazing, number one, how amazing it is to watch it all unfold in a day. But number two, uh, to kind of get a scope of, like, this is hard. This is like not easy to pull off. But at the end of the day, when you pull it all off and everybody's pumped, it's a really, really, really cool thing to see happen.
Yeah. Uh, that's one of the reasons why it's so hard to break in to like the session community as a player, is because especially in the beginning, if you want to do it every single day, 9 to 5, that type of thing, you have to be able to bullshit your way through just about anything.
Yeah,
And it takes a long time to build up your vocabulary to be able to do that.
for sure.
So it's tough for the young guys, you know what I mean? They're always getting called for sessions 20 minutes before because someone, got a stomach bug.
Gotcha.
They're like, I know this guy can play, like we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then they go in, they kill it, and it's like, all right,
Yep.
I feel confident in calling them. But it's really hard to work in new people just because there's so much on the line, especially you like what you do and what I do. I'm a mixed bag of singles
Yep.
all day.
Right.
6 different songs, 6 different styles. It's like, man, those are the ones where it's like the call list is short.
Yeah, for sure.
But when you got a record, you know what I mean, and you got all day long and it's one cohesive vibe, it's really fun to cast different characters,
Yep.
you know.
And that's a little bit more of a rarity these days, but when you get that opportunity, it's super cool. We'll kind of wrap up here in just a second, but give everybody listening, um give everybody listening an idea of, like, what a typical week looks like, maybe what a month looks like. What does the scope of the work look like that you guys are doing here? Is there like an average amount of songs you have coming in? Is it has it kind of leveled out? Is it up and down per month? Those kind of things I think would be interesting to know.
So in Nashville, I would say that there's pretty consistent heavy seasons and pretty consistent slower seasons. So starting off January, for me, at least the last 10 years I've been doing it, is always just crazy. Just crazy. And it's crazy all the way till June.
Yeah.
And then that's about the time people really start touring. And, you know, you're still doing we're still doing like publishing demos and stuff like that. But then everybody's already cut their record, you know what I mean? And they're touring on it. So June, July are steady, but they're not, just completely crazy. And then once touring season is over, so you're coming back like August, like early to mid August, things kind of start picking up, and then it's completely frantic up until like October, November is just want to pull your hair out because for some reason everybody forgot that the year's gonna end and they don't have their songs cut yet. They didn't meet their quota at their publishing company, or like their distributor said that they had to do 6 more songs and they haven't cut them yet. And so you get a lot of like these crazy last minute things. And I remember one year I told people, I was like, December 16th, my last day, you know what I mean? Shutting it down. I always shut it down for like 2 weeks at least at the end of the year. Cause like when we're going like how we're going over here, I mean, it's hard to even find time to like fix things, So I always shut it down.
You're talking about maintenance kind of stuff.
Maintain, yeah. So a lot of it is like, okay, I got a running list of things I need to fix. And if I don't take 3 weeks off in December, it's not going to happen. Yeah. And then sure enough, there's always someone with the December 16th, dude, do you have any time to cut this Christmas song? I'm like, no, no, I don't. Like, stop it. Just do it next year. Yeah. Christmas is every year. Just figure it out. But yeah, so to answer your question, there's a little bit of like a dip and a lull. It seems pretty consistent. Our average, we average over 1,100 songs a year tracking pretty consistently. I've been producing somewhere over like 150 to 180 songs a year. And then the rest of them, I am either playing drums for a producer, or we're tracking full band for a producer, or doing publishing demos or something like that. Yeah. So kind of just like like I do my thing here, and I was able to build my team by producing, but then it's also beneficial for a lot of other producers and writers to
use the
plug
room.
in. Yeah.
That's the other facet of the building you guys have here, is the fact that outside producers can basically just hire your crew to track stuff for a record that they're going to take back to their place and finish. Totally. So that's another
We do it
caveat.
all the time. Yeah. All the time. Sometimes they'll track it here and do vocals here. Sometimes we'll just mix it. Sometimes they'll do the whole thing, top to bottom here. Right. It's great. Plug in wherever you want to plug in. Let us help you out wherever your deficit is. You know what I mean? Sure. If you don't have the time to sit there in your room and track every single instrument, like there's options. There's people that do that every single day. There's studios like yours or mine where there's a call list of great players that can jump on the song and bring it to life. Make it happen.
Yeah.
So.
Sure. Grady, man, I'm not going to hold you up any longer. I sincerely appreciate your time today and letting me come in and pick your brain and giving us some inside view to Saxman Studios.
Anytime. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, and once again, love what you guys are doing here. Really love all the setup that you have here. And if you have a few minutes, we may go do a little B-roll through, kind of show everybody what we have, what you have going on here, and what the setup looks like. He's got an extremely cool Shelford console in the A room that maybe we'll give him a sneak peek of here in just a little bit.
Yeah.
But thanks again, man, so much. Great to see you again, as always. And
good to see you.
We will catch you guys again next time on the Studio 101 podcast. Take care. We'll see you next time.